What's going on, guys? My name is Joe. You can find me everywhere online as Tattooed Theist. We're going to be looking at pro-choice Christianity today. The first thing we'll look at is kind of how pro-choice is siphoned off into different religious groups, even outside of Christianity, but then within Christianity, where people fall denominationally as far as pro-choice views. After that, we're going to dive into a couple very specific articles, so we get kind of a taste of what the mainstream media is pushing and what some of these denominations and churches are connecting with the mainstream media to push certain narratives out in order to push their objective. So we obviously, everybody knows, since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, this has become a very big deal again. Everybody's talking about it again. So a lot of these key points that we used to hear years back are being riled back up. First thing we're going to take a look at is from Pew Research. So I've got a few statistics here, but the first one is major religious group positions on abortion. So the orange box there says opposes abortion rights with few or no exceptions. I highlighted the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and you'll know why here in a little bit later on in the video, why I did that. And then the other one I highlighted there was Hinduism, because obviously it's not Christianity, but these are people who very outright within the faith, unless you're looking at a very reformed version of it, they outright are pro-life rather than pro-choice. But also on that list, you've got the Assemblies of God, you've got the Roman Catholic Church, you've got the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. You have sort of these denominations that fall into a certain bucket within Christianity. I mean, if you're like me and you hear the Catholic Church, Latter-day Saints, Lutheran Baptist, and Southern Baptist, you get this feeling because you know kind of how those people jive, what their general consensus on society and on specifically abortion. I mean, the Baptists, man, they've made the news quite a bit for a very long time. So you kind of get this feeling. So it's not shocking that they're in that orange category of opposes abortion outright with few or no exceptions. To the right of that, you've got supports abortion rights with some limitations. You got the Episcopal Church, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and then I highlighted the United Methodist Church. And again, just like the African Methodist, because we're going to take a look into that here in a minute. To the right of that, you have supports abortion rights with few or no limits. Conservative Judaism, Presbyterian Church USA, Reformed Judaism, which I kind of disagree with. They support abortion pretty outright, in my experience. Just my experience, my opinion. I've had a good amount of interaction. I have close relationships with some people who are considered Reformed Jews, and that's been my experience with them, is that they're pretty pro-abortion. Just my experience, though. Unitarian Universalists and the United Church of Christ. And again, highlighted because we're going to talk about it here in a minute. The last one there, you've got no clear position, Islam, Buddhism, National Baptist Convention, and Orthodox Judaism. Again, I have an opinion there on the Judaism. Orthodox. In my experience, they are not about it. They are pro-life. They are not pro-choice. Again, my experience. So then moving down to this next section, this paragraph right here. These are notes from me, Christian denominations that are pro-choice. These are, again, my personal experiences. I attended some seminary here. I have fairly extensive experience with the Methodist Church here. It is extremely pro-choice in my experience, in my state. Along with them is the United Church of Christ. So they, in my experience, are the most progressive, left-leaning, sacrificing of tradition and values for culture and social acceptance denominations of all of Christianity that I have experienced in my personal life. First to accept the LGBTQ pastors and leadership in a very mainstream way was the United Methodist Church. Moving down, you've got the first to jump on the pro-abortion train, again, in more of a mainstream way. They were very open to bringing that in. And that's not shocking. If you're going to sacrifice traditional values and views and bring the LGBTQ into leadership within the church, again, I have no problem with homosexuals. I have no problem with the LGBTQ thing. I have a problem when kids get involved. And I have a problem when they start to get into leadership positions within a church, because it just doesn't, it's not cohesive with what the church teaches. So I don't care the lifestyle, live how you want, do what you want, you're an adult. But if you're going to step into roles that are counter what that role really is and what that entire religious system teaches, then an issue. Do I have a problem with women being in leadership? Not at all. And I have tons of scripture to back that up. And I have a video on it. You can find that. I'll drop it in a card right up here. Next is, again, in my experience, I drive around Illinois a lot. I work a job where I am in every city all the time. So I see the rainbow flags flying outside of Methodist churches all over. And I started to see it several years ago, and it just became more and more and more and more common. But even when I first moved here, and that was many years ago, they already were doing it. Where the seminary that I started to go to was inclusive. It had rainbow banners in the hallways. There was all sorts of stuff. There was a reason I didn't continue going. It wasn't because of that, but it was that along with a bunch of other stuff. It was extremely progressive. I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't feel like it was, it didn't fit me. I guess I'll just say that. And then the first to allow drag shows on the altar and on the stage. Again, that is in my personal experience. I've seen the drag shows begin to become hardcore and to begin letting them on the stage in front of kids doing their thing in the United Methodist Church. That's been my experience and what I've seen. Moving down, we get into this source, okay? And I've got the source here, and I will drop that in the description in case you want to read the whole thing. But basically, we have this Jess Cast, who is a minister of the United Church of Christ, and that's why I highlighted that above. We got a quote here. It says, "A new generation of religious leaders has begun to take up the mantle and holy calling of serving the 1 in 4 women who will have an abortion in their lifetimes." That's an astonishing number. "Of teaching comprehensive sex education in light of a loving God who desires human flourishing, or advocating and organizing and teaching and writing for reproductive justice." Jess Cast, again, is a minister in the United Church of Christ. She also serves on the Clergy Advocacy Board of Planned Parenthood. That's something. Which works to increase public awareness of the theological and moral basis for advocating reproductive health. I'm all about reproductive health, but they use it as a fancy way to bundle it up, very pretty looking, to talk about abortion. It's not reproductive health. It's a very specific thing. Reproductive health, we can think of all sorts of other things that would fall into that category. They've put this in that category because it's much more palatable to somebody who's hearing it, right? It's a lot easier to take in if we call it reproductive health. It's something that the mainstream media uses and does in order to make it just easier to hear for the American people, right? She says, I began questioning, what about bodily autonomy? Isn't that justice? How would God ever infringe upon that? She goes on to say, and this was a big one for me, why is it that when it comes to this topic, it's almost always white, straight Christians who are the loudest? Sorry, Christian men. That was an important part. It's the most important part. White, straight Christian men who are the loudest about pro-choice, pro-life, about abortion. So what I do is I pulled you a statistic here from Pew Research. You've got men on the left. Dark blue is legal in all or most cases, and light gray blue is illegal in all or most cases. On the right, you've got women. So men, you got 58 believe it should be legal in all or most cases, compared to in women, 63. That's not a big gap. So is it mostly white, straight men who are speaking out against abortion? No, it seems like men in general, and no, it's not categorized by race, but men in general are for it, right? Whereas opposed, who think it should be illegal in all or most cases, you've got 41 men as opposed to 35 on the women's side. Again, that is not a big gap. But you will hear in the mainstream media constantly that it is specifically straight, white Christian men, or cis white Christian men, however you want to say it. The research doesn't really show that. There is a margin. I'm not pretending like there's not, but it's not a huge gap where it's like white straight men are the ones who are freaking out about abortion being legal anywhere. It's not what the statistics say. It's just not. It's something that you should know. Jess Cass here continues. I think there's this view that progressive liberal Christians don't take scripture or theology seriously. That couldn't be further from the truth. I take scripture and theology, I believe, more seriously now. I responded to this by saying, I can tell you one thing. You'll be hard-pressed to find biblical scholars and biblical academics who are pro-choice, and that is true. Find me a bunch of them. You just can't. Now, that's not to say in 5, 10, 15 years, there won't be due to culture, but as of right now, it's just hard to find. Most of them are still pro-life. It's just the way it is. It seems that almost only progressive liberals who haven't or don't have an intimate understanding of how to perform exegesis versus eisegesis, We continue to dive deeper into reading our culture into Scripture rather than extracting the culture of Scripture to understand it within our culture. I hope that makes sense. But what we're doing right now is we are reading our culture, what is happening in our culture, what's happening around us in society. We're reading that into Scripture. That's why you have these churches that are all LGBTQ. You can't make that cohesive with Scripture. I don't hate them. I don't even dislike them. I have friends who are gay. I don't care, but they're not cohesive. But what we're doing is we're reading whatever's happening around us in culture into the Bible, twisting and turning and doing crazy gymnastics to make it work, to make it fit, so that we can have people have these churches that are, completely LGBTQ friendly. Do I care if anybody within that community is in a church? Not at all. I would love for them to be in church. I would attend any church that was welcoming and loving to the LGBTQ community, 100%. Do I think we should fly the flag outside? Personally, no. Do I think they should be a pastor? No. These are my opinions. You're welcome to disagree with me. All right, moving on now here to Black Christians discuss how faith informs their stances on abortion. Again, this is from a source, abcnews.go.com. I'll drop that in the description as well if you want to read the whole thing, so you know I'm not taking things out of context. But for Sherilyn Holloway, her support of Black Lives Matter has everything to do with her stance on abortion. Those lives, she says, deserve to have someone speaking up for them, Holloway added. From the womb to the tomb, all of it matters. Holloway had 2 abortions herself before she decided how she felt about the issue. It was about 3 days later she said, "That is enough." She remembered, "I sat on the floor and I wept. I was tired of being a subpar Christian. I was tired of saying I was a Christian and not acting like it." That's phenomenal. This is somebody who I would think is progressive, because she's very Black Lives Matter, which is, it's a progressive thing. Supporting colored people is not the same as Black Lives Matter. It's a very specific organization that had a very specific goal. But that's, in my opinion, and it doesn't specify within the article, so this is my opinion, is that she's a relatively progressive person, which is great. She goes on to list her personal experience. So she had 2 abortions herself. And then she had this realization that something was not right, that something was wrong, something did not feel okay about this as a Christian. So she decided to make a change. Now, this next quote is from somebody else that this article highlighted who's on the other side. They're in the other camp. So this individual said, "I've always been a person that believed that a woman had the right to choose. The conflict really came in. Am I going to be able to function as I feel I need to function in church or in faith and be able to stand and fight for the rights of women? Am I going to be allowed to do that? Or am I going to be looked at as you can't be both? And I just decided one day that I could be both. And no one but I had the right to tell me that I couldn't be." So this person is a Christian. Again, this article is looking at 2 African-American women. One is pro-choice, one is pro-life. This is the pro-choice individual. She's a Christian. And at the end, she says, I highlighted that again. No one but I had the right to tell me I couldn't be. Not God, not Scripture, not history, not tradition. As a Christian, these are things we adhere to. Otherwise, are you Christian? Not that we don't sin and make mistakes. I will be the first one to say I live in sin. Not intentional. I work very hard not to. But no part of me pretends that I am sin-free. No part of me that pretends that I get through a week without reflecting on my past week, being like, God, I should have done that. I should have not done that. Next week, I'm going to try to do this and to not do this. But if we have this self-righteousness of no one but me has the right to tell me that I can't be on both sides of something, I don't agree with that it is Christian. That's you being an individual wanting to live however you want and support the things that you want based on how you feel rather than what you know is right, or based on what you decide is right, usually contingent on culture, not contingent on Scripture. And that is a key takeaway. So there were a few things there. And the reason we went into that last article there is because of the reference earlier to white, straight Christians. Like, no, there is a large community within the colored people sector, whether it be Asian or Black or Mexican, whatever it is, that are extremely anti-abortion, extremely pro-life, especially in the Hispanic community. because there is deep Catholicism rooted in the Hispanic community, even if they're not practicing Catholics anymore, but they still hold their Christian values. They're extremely pro-life. Now, to answer the question, can Christians be pro-choice? Yeah, duh. They can be. I would question their Christianity. I would question their faith. I would question other things then, for sure, because that's a big one. To be pro-choice versus pro-life within Christianity, it's hard. I don't know how else to say that. It's very difficult to have that stance and call yourself, a follower of Christ. Now, what I want to do now is I want to run you through a few verses. We've got Psalms 139, 13 through 16. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. We know what that is. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Relatively clear. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Proverbs 6:16 through 19. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. I'd like to just touch on that real quick. A false witness who pours out lies and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. How many people are the person who stirs up conflict in the community? We need to be trying to mitigate some of that. And I am calling myself out as well. I'm trying to be way more conscious now of how I'm interacting with people online specifically, because I'll get instigated a lot of the time. People will instigate me because they want to argue. They want to fight. There are a couple people on Instagram right now that are just, they have a bone to pick with me like you could not believe. It's insane. If you go read through my comment section on some of these posts that I make, we go back and forth, and I'm praying. I'm like, God, please help me stay calm, help me be respectful, help me show love, but still stand firm. It's a tightrope walk, because I don't want to be that person who stirs up conflict in the community. I really, really don't. Moving on. Next verse is Job 31:15. Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one form us both within our mothers? Psalm 22:10. From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God. Isaiah 49:15. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. Now, a couple of just last leaving notes here, because they are very, very important notes. You have the issue of rape. You have the issue of incest, and you have the issue of child pregnancy. I want to pull my hair out at these topics because they break my heart. They absolutely break my heart. I have no idea what should be done with that. No idea. Because that is unimaginable. I could never put myself in the shoes of a woman who had been sexually assaulted and then became pregnant. I can't even fathom what that feels like. So I never talk about what should be done in that case. I hope to God that a system gets worked out for it. I don't know, man. It literally makes me sick to my stomach. That and child pregnancy just make me sick to my stomach. So you will never hear my opinion on that. I'll never talk about it. I'll never tell anyone what to do about it, because there is no part of me. And it's not because I'm a man. It's because I haven't experienced those things. So I just can't fathom that. And my heart breaks for anybody who's ever been through that or who loves somebody who's been through that. God bless you. And if I could do anything for you, I would do it for you. Those are horrible instances. And there has to be something that can be done for people who are going through that. It's something that can't be ignored. And it's something that Christians can't just brush off like, no, abortion's abortion. That's not to say that it should be allowed. I don't have an opinion, because I genuinely just don't feel like it's fair for me to have one, because if I can't put myself in the shoes of somebody to make an educated decision, to make a sympathetic decision on what my opinion might be on something, then I don't form an opinion. And I don't like that either. I don't like sitting on a tightrope, sitting in the middle, not being, not standing firm in something, but I just can't do it. I can't do it. God bless you. If that is you, or if that is anybody you know, my heart breaks for you. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Where do you land? Why do you land there? And also, I'd like to know how you thought this video went. Was I fair? Was I overbearing? Give me some feedback on this. I'd be curious to see what you guys think. I love you guys. If you haven't subscribed, consider doing that. I'm going to keep trying to make this better and better and better. If you have any suggestions for topics that I could cover, leave that for me too, or shoot me a DM on Twitter or Instagram.